Hello and welcome to Frankly Speaking, where we dive deep into regional headlines with leading policymakers and business figures. I am Katie Jensen. Marwan Barghouti has spent more than 2 decades in an Israeli prison, yet polls still place him as the most popular Palestinian leader and a figure that many believe could unite Fatah and Hamas. Earlier this month, he was seen for the first time in years after far-right Israeli minister Itamar Ben-Gvir entered his cell and taunted him on camera. The footage sparked outrage, not least from his family. On this episode, we speak to his son, Arab Barghouti, about that moment, his father's enduring influence, and what the path to a Palestinian state looks like today. Mr. Arab, thank you for joining us today on Frankly Speaking. Now, just days ago, the world saw extraordinary footage of Israel's far-right National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir walking into your father's prison cell. Now, of course, your father is the most prominent Palestinian prisoner, Marwan Barghouti, and we saw the minister taunt him on camera. Now, this is the first video the world has seen of your father in decades. Frankly speaking, what does that moment reveal about Israel's treatment of Palestinian political prisoners, particularly leadership figures like your father?
Yeah, so thank you for having me. I think that it's a representation of what the Israeli government has become. We've always thought that there is a ceiling towards the amount of desperation that they're going to get to, but I don't think that there is a ceiling. And the ceiling is not there because, or the limit is not there because I think that they are getting the green light from all Western governments to do whatever they want. Someone like Ben-Gvir is the one who should be in prison. He's a fascist, he's a convicted terrorist, and he's calling for the genocide of the Palestinian people. But I can tell you that this is the normal relationship between an oppressed and oppressor. And I think that this picture will go down in history as a representation of the oppression that the Palestinian people have been through. And I think that there is nothing to be ashamed of or embarrassed of as his son. I think that my father stood tall against oppression, as always representing the whole of the Palestinian people.
Let me ask a little bit about your family's response to this, because it shocked the world, and I have no idea that it was absolutely shocking for your family as well. Your mother in particular, Fatwa, she's been your father's voice to the outside world for more than 2 decades. Now, she said that watching that video was humiliating and deeply painful. It was certainly frightening, the amount of weight he has lost. Tell me, what did that moment mean for her and for your entire family?
It's not easy. I don't think it's easy for us to take minutes to be able to recognize my father's face. The whole family hasn't seen my father in more than 2.5 years, since before October 7th, and it's not easy. He's been losing weight. He's been assaulted multiple times in prison. You can see how his body is getting weaker. And it's not easy, but I think that we always remind ourselves that my father's fate is always linked with the Palestinian people's fate. If they're being starved, he's being starved. If they're being assaulted, he's being assaulted, and that's a path that he's chosen. I think the sad part is to see his 6 grandchildren that he's never met before looking at him and asking so many questions that this is not our grandfather that we've always known. But I think that's a representation of the Palestinian suffering, and we represent thousands of Palestinian families that are going through the same pain at the moment.
He certainly lost a lot of weight. He's talked multiple times about the different beatings he's endured in the prison there. And even the Israeli human rights group, the Public Committee Against Torture in Israel, said in May last year that what your father has endured in Israeli prisons over the years amounts to torture. So it must have been a shock to you to see that video. Tell me, you say you haven't been able to speak to him in several years. Have you or other family members, have they been able to visit your father recently? When was the last time that you or your mother saw him in person?
The last time my mother saw him was 2.5 years ago, and I haven't seen him in 3 years. Until I turned 16, I used to see him once or twice a month after turning 16, because in Israeli judicial system, a Palestinian is an adult at the age of 16, while an Israeli is an adult at the age of 18, even if we both live in the West Bank and even if they're illegal settlers. And this shows you the injustice that we go through as Palestinians from the Israeli judicial system. And after turning 16, I would see him once every 2 to 3 years. So this is the norm, actually.
Yeah, we know that family visits as a whole have largely been very much restricted by the Israeli forces. Tell me, is your father allowed any form of communication? You say you haven't seen him in person for several years. Tell me, is he allowed to communicate with you in written letters, in phone calls, or video contact with you or your family?
No, I think after October 7th, everything changed. There's no any way of communication. The only way is the lawyer, and the lawyer has only been able to see him a handful times.
When's the last
And
time his lawyer saw him?
he saw him actually right before that video was taken by Ben-Gvir.
Okay.
And he saw him before that. He said that he was still in solitary confinement. He was, he talked about the assaults that he's been through and about what's happening inside prisons. If you talk to any Palestinian political prisoner who has been released in the last few months, you will understand the amount of torture that they go through regularly every single day. And this is why we have lost already since October 7th more than 76 Palestinian detainees. And that's only the documented cases. We know that there are many undocumented cases from the genocide that is happening in Gaza as well.
Yes, we know your father's been in solitary confinement since October 7, and as a whole, he's spent more than 23 years in Israeli prisons, and yet polls consistently still show him as the most popular leader amongst Palestinians, ahead of both Mahmoud Abbas and Hamas figures as well. How do you explain his enduring influence despite his physical absence from politics?
I think it can be explained by mentioning what he is. He is a unifying figure, and that's the main point that Palestinians appreciate him for. The other thing is that he is someone who is willing to sacrifice for his people. The first statement when he went to prison, he said that if the price of my people's freedom is my own freedom, I'm willing to pay that price, and he is paying that price. The other thing is that I think he has a political vision that is accepted by all the Palestinian people, and that's why in 2006 his biggest political achievement was bringing all Palestinian factions into one umbrella and one document, the prisoners document. And it said that an establishment of Palestinian state in the 67 borders, the targeting of civilians is forbidden. The resistance should be limited to within the 67 borders as well. And he put all these points in one document that even Hamas, Islamic Jihad, and all Palestinian political factions signed on. And this is something that we Palestinians appreciate, because we are hungry for unity, and we've been divided for too long and paying the price for that.
When you talk about being hungry for unity, your father has long been seen as one of the only figures who could unite Fatah, Hamas and smaller factions. So if he were free today, what are the practical steps that he would push for to make unity a reality?
I think he has a political vision that is accepted by the Palestinian factions, and his political vision is based on establishing a sovereign, independent Palestinian state that secures freedom and living with dignity for all Palestinians, and that's something that we all agree on. And the interesting thing is that it's not only accepted by Palestinian factions, but also by the international community itself. The whole international community nowadays is calling for the two-state solution. Here is a leader who is, the most popular leader in Palestine, and speaks of what the international community accepts of. But that's why we need the help of the international community, and especially the regional powers like the Saudis, the Emiratis, and Qataris, Egyptians, Jordanians. We need their help to make sure that we have that in reality.
Given the huge divisions today that we see within the Palestinian political parties, the various smaller factions as well, what would actually be needed in order to make that unity a reality today?
I think we need to open a dialogue and we need to have internal discussions. We have to agree on including all parties within the PLO as well. The PLO needs to be reformed. The same with the PA. The PA obviously is suffering from a lot of let's say, honestly, corruption. It's helpless in the face of settler terrorism in the West Bank, and we're not against the body of the PA. The PA is very important for the representation of the Palestinian people, but it needs to be reviewed in terms of its institutions and so on. And I think he's a positive force that can start those conversations.
I mean, when we look at inside Fatah itself, the rivalries are already intensifying. President Abbas, he's 89 years of age, deeply unpopular. Polls continue to show that the majority of Palestinians want him to step down. There's even been reports that have claimed that the PA's inner circle told Israel they don't want your father released. They feel it could threaten Mr. Abbas's rule. So if he was freed, how would your father deal with those divisions inside Fatah?
I think he's a unifying figure, not only for the Palestinian people, but also for Fatah. If you ask my father, he is a proud Fatah member. He is a member of the Central Committee of Fatah. He was voted first by far at the highest votes inside Fatah, not outside Fatah only. He's a parliament member. So I think with his credibility, with his resume, he can bring people together. He's not someone who is going to destabilize the Palestinian politics. He's never been interested in that. And even when it comes to the PA leadership and Fatah leadership, he's more interested into bringing people together rather than to bring more divisions. So it won't be something done in a chaotic way. It will be organized and having positive dialogues and discussions internally until we get to a point where Fatah is stronger. And I think a strong Fatah means a stronger Palestinian cause and a stronger representation of the Palestinian people.
And of course, on the Israeli side too, politics have hardened. Israel's government now includes convicted extremists like Ben-Gvir. We've seen settlement expansion that is at a record pace. So I have to wonder, in that reality, is a two-state solution still viable, or is it completely finished?
If you ask our generation, we don't believe in the two-state solution anymore. My father is not delusional. He is a supporter of the two-state solution, but he is not delusional. He understands that it's going to be very, very hard to do, but it's the only viable solution at the moment. It's the only acceptable solution, even by the international community. Our problem is not with the solution itself. Our problem is with committing to whatever we agree on. If we remember the Oslo Accords, it was 5 years temporary agreement until we declare the Palestinian state. What the Israelis did afterwards is not committing to that agreement. They killed Isaac Rabin, if we remember, at the moment and at that time, and then they doubled the number of illegal settlers, and then they started violating every single point of that agreement. So it's holding the Israelis accountable. As long as we always say that if you go back to the root cause of this whole issue, it's the illegal occupation. And my father said that the last day of occupation will be the first day of peace. There's no way we can have peace as long as we're oppressed.
Well, let's hope we do see that. Let me ask you about the international scene when it comes to recognising Palestine. We know that 147 countries now recognise Palestine as a state. The UN has upgraded its status as well. But I have to wonder, in your opinion, has that recognition and the wave of solidarity movements we've seen globally, has it really changed anything on the ground? And can calls for sanctions against Israel realistically shift its policy?
I think on the ground, no. as long as the genocide is happening as we speak, and as long as the ethnic cleansing, the highest ethnic cleansing campaign within the West Bank is happening, the assaults and the killing of Palestinian detainees, we can't say that things have been changed on the ground. That doesn't mean that the difference hasn't been made. Of course, there is a huge difference and shift in the whole world, and we've been screaming for years and decades for the whole world to hear us and to listen to us and to see what's happening with us. And finally, they can see. I don't think that there is any comeback for the Israeli government from this. They got exposed for what they are. They are a genocidal apartheid state that has been practicing apartheid for 76 years. And finally, the world can see what this Israeli government represents. And I think that within a few years, I want to send, my regards to all the younger people in the West, in the Arab world, and everywhere that are calling for Palestinians' rights, that are supporting the Palestinian cause overall, and it will make a difference. If we look at South Africa, within a few years, everything shifted and changed. But in order for that to happen, we need the international communities to stop, their complicity in what's happening, and to actually sanction the Israeli government like they did with many other governments.
Mm-hmm. Well, we certainly are seeing more global support and calling for more recognition of Palestine as a state. But I think the infighting within the PA is still causing to be a huge challenge. But I want to go back to the point you said about Israel sticking to an agreement, because of course the Israeli side blames the Palestinian divisions.
Well, if we go back to the Palestinian division, I think that in 2006, when the elections happened, the Israeli government did not like the results. So what they did is that they started pressuring the international community to isolate the PA back then. And then the PA collapsed because the funding has stopped from the EU, from the US, and many other governments. And that's exactly what caused the Palestinian division. What we're saying now, don't make the same mistake again. And we want and aspire to be a democratic state. Let us have our elections. Let us have a healthy leadership and a healthy political system, and then we will move forward from there. I think that we as Palestinians are ready to establish our own sovereign democratic state.
Okay, but let me ask you, because we had Ihad Olmert on the program last week, and he actually said that the PA refused an excellent deal, which would have given land and East Jerusalem. So wouldn't you agree that between the 1999 Camp David and after Palestinian leadership lost several opportunities?
I totally disagree with that. If you go,
okay, tell me why.
Because this is the Israeli narrative. Since 1947, they're saying the same exact thing. The Palestinians refused the partition plan. The Palestinians refused this. The Palestinians refused that. In the partition plan, we were given 45%, even though Palestinian Christians and Muslims back then owned more than 90% of the land. We were given 45% from a new formed organization that was called the UN back then. And that's, of course, not something that any people are willing to accept. Then they got 78% of the land, and then they completed the whole land in 67. And then in 93, they came in and they said, okay, we'll give you the 22%, but we're going to divide them between A, B, and C areas. And C areas, represent 62% of the West Bank. It's all manipulative.
Sure, but the infighting, continues to be a big issue. I mentioned a little bit earlier, we were speaking, there was a report by Middle East Eye in May this year. They had talked about the fact Hamas had called for the release of your father as part of the ceasefire deal. Now, there were reports that the inner circle of the PA, now they've denied these reports, but there were reports that the inner circle there had actually asked Israel to keep your father in jail. They felt he was a threat to Mr. Abbas. So even on that level, clearly the Palestinian divisions are causing huge challenges still. So I feel like I'm going to challenge you a little bit on that.
Yeah, sure, but I don't think that. First of all, I refuse to believe that any Palestinian doesn't want my father to be released, and I don't
Mhm.
want to get into these discussions because I think they're all speculations. If you see even the public statements by the PA, it's very supportive of my father. Doesn't mean that they're perfect. Doesn't mean that we don't have many disagreements. But I think that these kinds of discussions, they take away the accountability from the occupying power and put
Mm.
it on the occupied. It's not our problem. It's not our fault that we're occupied. As long
Mhm.
as we're occupied, no one has the right to judge us what we do and how we defend ourselves against our occupier. And when it comes back to the Camp David, this is the Israeli narrative that I hear everywhere. The devil is in the details. If you go into the details, we didn't have full sovereignty. We didn't have any control or authority to what's under the land, including the resources, including all of that. We didn't have any control over Al-Aqsa area. So who's going to accept that?
Okay, well, let me ask you a little bit about the Palestinian resistance strategy as we look ahead to the future. Now, Fatah officially suspended armed resistance quite a long time ago. Hamas continues it. Now, your father has spoken in court about rejecting attacks on civilians, but also defending the right to resist occupation. Tell me, where does he stand today on the future of the Palestinian resistance strategy? Is it diplomacy, armed struggle, or both?
My father supports clearly political solutions. He's someone who holds a PhD in political science. He's been a politician his whole life. And we, of course, refuse the Israeli narrative that my father was, into military actions and so on. But with that being said, of course, my father supports the Palestinian rights of defending ourselves. How can we not have the right to defend ourselves like any other nation? He always said that political solutions are the priority, but we can't have only political solutions when we are getting bombarded and killed and genocide and all of that happening against us. So we have the right to defend ourselves. That's always been his policy.
Well, let me ask you about where we go from here. Today, as we speak, Gaza is in ruins, more than 60,000 killed there, 150,000 or more wounded. How do you see this current conflict ending? Who could realistically govern Gaza the day after this war? And I think overall, can Palestinian unity be rebuilt in the rubble?
Well, first of all, I think that it's not a conflict. It's a genocide. It's a relationship between our occupiers and colonizers, and between us, the indigenous people of the land, and that needs to be clear. If we are willing to compromise by signing agreements and so on, that's because we want to move forward, not because it's justice. Justice has long gone from this land since 1948. But I think that. Where we can go from here, of course, we need a Palestinian leadership. No one is has the right to come and tell us what to do and how to govern our own country. We need to build a democratic state. We need to have wise leadership that can take the decisions
Who do you think
for
that will
the.
be, though? When we talk about the day after on a realistic idea, who do you see as governing Gaza?
I think it needs to be a Palestinian side, and Palestinians to agree on a new administration, maybe interim administration for temporarily until we have elections. And once we have elections, we can take it from there. Elections will be the key for all Palestinian politics, and I think that it will contribute for the stability of the region as well, because the lack of unity in Palestine is one of the reasons why we are where we are right now.
You personally have emerged as a voice in your own right. You regularly speak to international media and audiences. I have to wonder, do you see yourself entering politics one day, or do you think you'll remain outside the formal arena?
I don't think so. My personal dream is to live in a Palestine that has children not worried about their future, children living in safety and security. And my father taught me that Palestinian identity is not only by resistance; it's also by being a good citizen, a good teacher, a good engineer, a good person. And this is exactly what we're trying to do. As I said, like my dream is for my father to meet with his grandchildren that he's never met before, and to fulfill the promise that he gave my mother mother more than 40 years ago when he told her that, when he proposed to her and told her that, I'm not going to be an engineer or a doctor. I'm going to be a politician. And the politician in Palestine is very risky because you might get killed, you might get arrested and so on. But I promise you, when Palestine is free, we will live a normal life. And we've been all, as a family, waiting for that moment. And I think I represent thousands of families when I say that.
Well, we hope that does happen. Finally, your father was taken when you were just 11 years old. So can I ask, on a personal note, tell me about the last time you saw him as a free man, and what do you remember most from him during your childhood?
I remember my father being a great father. He's always smiling. Even inside prison, the last time I saw him and spent real time with him was right before the second Intifada started, which is started in 2000. Before that, like a couple of months before the second Intifada, we were in Tunisia having a vacation as a family, and he loved Tunisia because he was exiled there in 87 before going to Jordan. And he's a great family man. He's a great husband, a loving father. He's very educated. He's very demanding and challenging when it comes to education and to development and so on. He's always looking for the future. I never once saw him complaining about anything. He's always grateful, and he instills in us the values of a true Palestinian, which is the values of freedom, justice, and living with dignity. And he's been my role model, as many other Palestinians. But my relationship with him is, of course, different because he is my father, and I can't wait for the day to spend the years with him. I know it will not compensate for the last 23 years that I couldn't even hug him in, but at the same time, it will be good for him as I said, like to see and meet his grandchildren and to teach them the values that he taught us as his children.
But do you remember the last day that you saw him as a free man? Do you remember where you were or what you did?
Yes, he was wanted. We saw him at a relative's house because we need to remember that my father, they tried to assassinate him 3 different times during the Intifada. So it was early 2002. We went to a relative's house, and that was the last time I saw him and hugged him. And he seemed, he was smiling, he was very positive and so on. But I know that he was under so much threats. So many threats to be assassinated, and knowing the Israeli government, they wouldn't care to bomb him with his family, and that's why he chose to stay away from the family to protect us.
Well, Arab Barghouti, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your insights with us. And we do hope that you are reunited with your father one day, sooner rather than later. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Of course, thank you. I really appreciate it.